'Cause he's a maniac, maniac, and he won't go out the door. Sometimes ideas work better in theory than in practice, but we are going to ask the question today, does the type of political party, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, affect the type of pet you're likely to have? We have dog, we have cat, we have bird. So our null hypothesis would say political party is independent of pet choice, while the alternative would suggest that there is some link. And notice again, we're not doing symbols, we write this out with words. So here's our data. What's our first step? We need the totals across the columns and the rows. Based on those, we can get the expected values. How do I get these numbers? That's our expected value equation. This 20.8 would come from 48 times 65 over 150. And notice these all add up to the same totals. This is still 48, 52, 50. If they don't add up, and rounding sometimes can mess that up, but you should be getting exactly the right numbers here. So you can check yourself. Now, we need to ask the question, can I finish this test or am I stuck here? And the answer is all my expected values are bigger than 5. Which one was I most worried about? Probably this guy. 4 is actually below 5 in the observes table, but that's okay. You can have less than 5 in the observes. Over here, it's 9.36 is the expected value. So we are okay to keep going and to get our next step, which is to get these chi-squared values. They come from this equation, expected minus observed. Actually, I think it's supposed to be observed minus expected, which is fortunately exactly what I wrote right there. So we take 20.8. So we take 22 minus 20.8 squared and divide it by the 20.8. And that gives us our 0.069. I realize if you mix these up, it doesn't actually matter, but I want to emphasize we're still doing x bar minus mu, and it's important that you see that pattern. Each of these chi-squared values, now that we have our chi-squared, partial chi-squared table, we can ask the question, who is most weird? You might think it's going to be Democrats who own a dog because it's the biggest number on there. But no, that's actually pretty close to what we expected, and the chi-squared value is pretty small. The one that's most weird is the number of independents who have a bird. There's a lot of independents out there with a bird. Why? Well, I don't know, but that's most weird. There's 2 others that are a little, whoa, does that one count? Maybe. Also weird is the number of Democrats who have beards. Is the number of Democrats who have birds. There's not as many as you would have thought. So for some reason, independents like to have a bird and Democrats do not like to have a bird. Why? I don't know. That's interesting. If independents are liking the birds, what is it they're not liking? They appear to be avoiding dogs for some reason, and that'd be fun. To get our chi-squared, we're going to add these up. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I keep pausing the video because it takes a long time to do these. That's why on exams, you will often see big chi-squared tables where a lot of the values are filled in for you. That's because it just takes too long otherwise. But it's okay for me because it gives me a chance for my shirt to dry out, which is working so well. Our chi-squared value is 9.012. That's what you get if you add all these guys up. What's our degrees of freedom? If I took out a row and took out a column, how many blocks are left? I'd have these 4 blocks. So my degrees of freedom is 4. That's row minus 1, which is 2, times columns minus 1, which is also 2. There's 4. So on our applet, we're going to go to a chi-squared with 4. 4 is actually what it has by default. How do you like that? So I don't need to change my degrees of freedom. Do change your degrees of freedom first, though, because otherwise it'll mess up what you put in here, which is going to be 9.012. And I do not want the area to the left. I want the area to the right. For chi-squared, always area to the right. So I get 0.0608. Which is bigger than our alpha. It's only barely bigger, but it is still bigger than alpha. And so we failed to reject the null, which means we cannot show a link between political party and pet, despite the fact that independents seem to have more birds and Democrats seem to avoid birds. It's not enough to say that it couldn't be just random luck or chance. Okay.